So here I'll walk you through the process of how I created this very simple app. In this app, basically you have two screens. You have the main screen, which is the shopping list, and then you can add an item to the cart. And then when you click on the cart icon, it's gonna show you the items here. You have the ability to increase the number of items in the cart or decrease them. You can clear the cart. So what's happening here is that under the hood is using Redux Toolkit. So the way you can get started is that you can fork my repo, or you can git clone it. So you can just go code, copy this HTTPS, say git clone, then paste the HTTPS. But there's lots of tutorials on how to do that. I've also just placed another guide here as well, how you can get started with this repo. I'll put the link in the description so that you can use it. But the way I normally do my projects, so this is the actual project when it's open. So the way I structured it, and that's the way I typically do for all my projects, is that you have the main app.js. That's where you're gonna find your route navigator. The route navigator basically controls all the navigation in the app. So I've already set up React navigation. So we have a drawer navigation here, and also like a stack as well. So that's how you're able to move from the cart to the main shopping list. So it's using mainly a stack. So if I go to the package.json, you're gonna see all the items which are here. So basically got React notification drawer, React notification native, stack navigator, and also Redux Toolkit. So what happens is that because Redux can be used on multiple languages besides React itself, so when you're using it on React, you have to actually install React Redux. So that's what I did here. So on top of installing Redux Toolkit. So after you install Redux Toolkit and after you installed React Redux, so what do you have to do? I won't walk you through the other steps of React navigation because that's the basic items. You should know that part. But I have other tutorials. Just can drop me a message in the comments if you want me to send you a link to those. So basically you're going to install Redux Toolkit, and you're also going to install React Redux. So after you finish installing React Redux and Toolkit, you have to create, you don't have to, but I recommend you create a folder called Redux, which is what I did here. So currently it's in my source folder. So under the Redux folder, like normally the first thing you do is create a store. And then what the store does is that basically combining all your registers, putting all your registers in one place. The registers basically tell the application itself what you're trying to do. For example, if you adding items to the cart, or you're removing items from the cart, or you're clearing items from the cart. So you put all that logic in registers. So, and then in the store, that's why you put everything together. So I created a store here, and then from the store, it's linking up this cart reducer. So what the cart reducer does is that it has all those registers or which have actions as well, which tell like the application. For example, when you click on add to cart, then you have the different options that you can play around with, like decreasing the quantity and removing it. So all of that is all defined in the registers. So after you created a store, I went to app.js. So like now that we know that all our state or like high level or global app state management is using Redux Toolkit, you have to sort of like wrap your app in that, provide the store to the whole app. So make sure that the whole app has access to it. The way you do that is we're gonna use a provider. So you have to wrap your app, of which mine is called Root Navigator. In there, you have to wrap it with the provider, and then the provider points to the store, and the store is the one that we just created there, which is perfect. And then the next thing that we do is that under Redux, you create a folder saying features, and then features. What feature are you creating? In this case, it's a cut. So create another folder saying cut, and then after that, now Redux uses this concept of using slices. So it's like a slice of your state. So we're gonna say cut slice.js, and then in the cut slice.js, this is where like we define our registers, like basically what we want the different sections to do in terms of like changing the state. So here, so our initial state will be nothing. So our cart initially, you have 0 items in the cart. Your cart is empty, so it's gonna be nothing. And then you want to be able to add to the cart. When you add to the cart, it's gonna basically so this is, we just destructed the payload, which has an ID. So we're saying that from trying to find the item.id, which matches the item that we've clicked on. So we find that item, and then we add it to our. So we're gonna add it to our state after that, and then we're gonna increase the quantity by 1 after that. So that's what we're doing. So we're pushing it there. So this is like the logic to add an item to the cart. And then so if I come here, once I press on add, this is what happens. So if I go to the cart itself, so we've just implemented this logic. So that means then there must be a way for me to link this button which says add to cart, and then we have to link it with this register right here. So I'll just show you in a moment how you link those two. Yeah, but other than that, there are other registers as well which do similar thing. For example, increment works here. When you increment here, it's also said like it's placed on the state on Redux, and then to decrement is here, then to remove an item. So when you press on remove, it just removes there. So there are 2 types of removes that we have implemented in the app. So if I put different items here, so there are 2 types. There is this clear cut, and then there is this remove. The remove only removes the individual item, and then this clear cut is also like a remove, but then it like refreshes the state to an empty array again, which clears everything. So on the side, these are the two functions that I've just worked on. So you have to export all your functions and then put them as cut slice.actions. So because this is a Redux Toolkit, you don't have to define actions separately, like in the way that you used before with React Redux using only hooks. So, and then from here, I did mention that you have to import it in the store, and then you have to point out like your cut reducer, and then export the store. So let's see, how do you actually now connect the buttons to like our state. So when we go there, we're gonna go to source, and then under source you're gonna go to your screens. The first one is the home screen. Home screen is the screen that we are on right now. So the home screen has this store container. So if I go to components, the store container contains everything which you see on the like the cut items, the store items that are here. They're all in the store container. So I'm just gonna, I imported it here, so I'm just gonna go to that section now, which is the store container. And then what it does that it does this fetch. So okay, let me just clean it up nicely. So what it does that there's a use effect on load. It fetches the items here, the store items, the products, and I'm using fake store API for the products, and then it sets them in the state as data. And then this logic can also be done in Redux Toolkit. So instead of using the fetch here, it's actually recommended that you also have another slice that you can use to do the fetch. If you're also interested in that, I can put it in the comments. And then after that, so when you press on add to cut, what you're doing is actually dispatching an action. So React Redux has two main pointers. So there's a dispatch and then there's a use selector. Use selector, basically you're taking items which are in your state and then you bring them down so that you can display them on the screen. But then when you dispatch an item, you're actually sending it back now to the state. So you're telling the state to update something, or to, that's why they say you're dispatching an action. So you have to import this item here. And then what else you have to import as well? So you have to actually, here it's gonna say const dispatch is equal to use dispatch, so which is the same import that we just don't have there. And then what you have to also do is to import your add to cut, because remember we did export them here, add to cut, because we want to use the add to cut function. So you have to export it here, and then you have to import it here, because that's what we're gonna use. So let's go to the button. So the button is here. The rest is just simple React Native logic. You got your main view. Your main view is wrapping an image and text, and the price, and then there's a button which is a touchable opacity, and then it is an on press. So we're saying that when you press this button, we want to dispatch this add to cut. So currently what happens that the item that you add into cut, you can add like only take the image and the title to your to your main state. But what I've done is that I add, when I say press on item, so basically I'm taking the whole data which is in the whole data which is coming from the API for that individual item. So if I move this guy up, so this is how the data looks like. So from here, so I'm just taking this whole item and I'm putting it in the state. So as in taking it to the cart. So I'm just saying take this whole data to the cart when I press on add to cart. So you can decide if you want certain items. For example, you want only the image to go to the cart, but it's normally better to just send the whole item to the cart, and then that's mainly it. So the way it's able to see which item you chose because of the ID. Remember when we on this section here on the cart slice, we do specify that the add to cart must look at the ID of the item, and then if the ID that we pressed on matches the ID which is on the list itself, then you must add it to the cart. So that's fine. So that's mainly it on this side, and then other screen is the cart screen as well. So in the cart screen, we have to do a lot of imports because there's a lot of things that we have to dispatch here. So the cart the increment, decrement, clear, and remove to cart, we all need those ones. But another one that we're gonna use now is this use selector. We said that a use dispatch takes an action and then moves it from that whatever screen you're on and then puts it to your cart or your state. And then in this case, like the use selector takes an item from your state and then displays it to whatever screen you're on. So previously we dispatched an item to the cart, which is went to the state. So saying that now from that state, we're gonna use the use selector to put it to the cart. So, which is what is happening here. So say cart is equal to use selectors from the state. You look at the cart, and then you'll take everything there. And then the total price, which is something else we're just gonna talk about this last. But then also remember we need to dispatch, so we have to import this use dispatch, and then normally equate it to dispatch. Then there are a couple of things that you're gonna dispatch now. If you wanna remove an item, it will use this dispatch to decrease, use the dispatch to increment. All of these actions or dispatches are done like on an on press, and then the on press is using a touchable opacity. So when you touch on remove, it will run that function which says remove. The way it does it, like, looks at the item.id. So that means then you must make sure always that like your ID, like the ID in your JSON matches the ID that you use here. Because one thing which might happen is that you might be using something like Postgres, which like uses like a UID, or you might have a key. So just make sure that all those items they match, because if they don't match, you won't be able to select that item that you want. So yeah, that's mainly it for this section. And then one other thing that we did now was like now after, like in the Redux folder, there's a file called selectors. So selectors, there are two selectors here. Then first one is called cart total selector. So what this does is that we want a way to be able to have the cart total. So if we go to the cart, you have this individual prices, and then you want a way to get the sum, which is also global to the whole app, so you can access it on any screen in the app. So the logic to it, it's simply also the same as using a create selector, which is part of Redux Toolkit. So, and then from there we take the state. Then from the state we're saying that like, so this is part of like destructuring. So we're saying that the cart will be, you can add to it it will be cut dot current dot quantity. And then if you look, so this the first one and the second one, they almost do the same thing, but the only difference is that like now here you have to multiply this price with this quantity. So that's what the second one is doing. First one is just looking at the total. And then when we go to the cart screen, so you'll notice that we actually like importing the cart total price selector, and then this will give us the total price, which we gonna place on that section there, which is here. And then that's mainly it for this section. So it's just like a matter of like defining those two, like your slice, your cut slice. Folder structure can be different, but then it's recommended to be consistent with it. And also, like I said, like if you guys want me to move the fetch or networking to the state as well, you wanna see how it's that is done, I can provide that to you. And that should be mainly it. The link to the repo is in the description. And if you like this and you wanna see more, just drop a like there or a comment, and I'll provide more information on this. Cool. Have a great one.